Mozilla published the engineering postmortem for how an AI system, Mythos, found 271 real vulnerabilities in unreleased Firefox code with what their own engineers describe as almost no false positives. And security researchers confirmed what many have feared for a long time, that any website you visit can indeed hijack the AI coding agent running on your laptop if somebody took the time to put the malicious prompt injection code in there. And a study screening 2.5 million biomedical papers found 12 times more fake citations in 2025 than in 2023. Same capability in 3 different directions. All right, let me show you what's actually being built today. Okay, let's start with Mozilla. Anthropic's Claude Mythos found 271 vulnerabilities in unreleased Firefox 150 code. That number was already public when the Century Report covered Mozilla's initial disclosure back in late April. What's new this time, though, is the postmortem itself, the detailed engineering account of how it was done. And let's really slow down on this because this part is important. It's the harness, not the model. Mozilla's engineers described their earlier brushes with AI vulnerability detection as producing, in their words, unwanted slop. Plausible reading bug reports at scale that turned out to be largely hallucinated. The Mythos work was different because of what Mozilla built around it. The agent had access to the same tools and pipelines that Mozilla developers actually use, the same Firefox build environment, and the success criterion was machine verifiable in the simplest possible way. Cause the build to crash. You either crashed the build or you didn't. No interpretation needed. That's the harness. The model is the capability, but the harness is what made the capability defensive rather than simply noisy. And here's why that distinction is truly important. Anthropic's Mythos sits behind restricted access tier, as we all know. The harness Mozilla built around it is now a published document. Anyone can read it and adapt it, apply it to their own code base. The capability layer compounds with these new frontier model releases that are coming. The scaffolding layer compounds with every published postmortem. Mozilla itself framed the finding as evidence that, this is their phrase, 0 days are numbered for projects with the engineering discipline to build a harness like this. A reasonable read of that is that the next defensive security team doesn't have to negotiate frontier model access to start. They can start from the published template and bring their own model. The verification capacity that had to be built one engineer at a time becomes a recoverable artifact the next team can draft against. Now, if you want a longer treatment of this one, today's Century Report has the full engineering breakdown. Now, the inverse story, same week in a different direction. Oasis Security disclosed yesterday a critical vulnerability in Cline, that's a popular AI coding agent. The vulnerability was rated 9.7 out of 10 on the standard severity scale. Here's what it does. If you're a developer, you're running Cline on your laptop, any website you visit while it's running can silently exfiltrate your workspace data, inject commands into the agent's terminal, or kill your active sessions. No phishing, no social engineering, you just visit a web page. Now, let me explain how that's even possible, because it tells you something really specifically important. For decades, developer tools have assumed that if software is running on localhost, meaning listening only on your computer, then it's safe. The implicit boundary was my machine, my software, my trust. That assumption was reasonable when the only software talking to localhost was your own development environment. AI coding agents broke that assumption a while ago now. Cline runs a server on localhost that browsers can connect to through WebSockets. And browsers, this is a technical detail, so stay with me, don't enforce cross-origin restrictions on WebSocket connections to localhost the way that they do for normal web requests. So, a malicious page can connect to the runtime endpoint, harvest your workspace context, identify an active task, and push commands to your terminal that the agent processes as if you typed them. So this risk is amplified because Cline ships with a bypass permissions flag on by default, which means the agent can execute shell commands and modify files without asking each time. Trey Ford over at BugCrowd put the broader issue really precisely. Patching this specific version closes this specific exposure, but auditing every AI tool that opens a local listener is the actual job to be done. Here's the forward read. The Century Report has been tracking this arc since the OpenClaw browser exploit research back in February. Yesterday's Cline disclosure adds something new. The audit pattern is becoming a recoverable template. Oasis Security found this same class of bug in OpenClaw earlier. Now it's Cline. Each disclosure, published at this level of detail, shortens the discovery time on the next agent, shipping with the same architectural inheritance. The localhost as trust boundary assumption was inherited from a generation of tools where it was true. Coding agents broke it, and the work of finding every place that broken assumption is hiding is now itself a published methodology. So, in one news cycle here, Mythos shows what coordinated, sanctioned use of AI on AI security work produces. Cline shows what happens when the same capability sits underneath a developer tool without the same scaffolding. Similar capability, same general approach of an AI, but the difference is the institutional layer around it. Okay, shifting away here. OpenAI launched something yesterday that I want you to really feel for a second here. This is called Trusted Contact. If you are an adult ChatGPT user, you can now designate someone, a friend, a family member, anyone you choose, who will get notified if your conversation indicates serious safety concerns about self-harm or suicide. The notification is intentionally limited. No transcripts, no chat details, just a heads up that someone they care about may need them. The contact has to accept their invitation within a week. The whole thing is opt-in, and it extends emergency contact infrastructure that OpenAI introduced alongside parental controls in September after a 16-year-old took his own life following months of confiding in ChatGPT. Now, there's something structural happening here that I think a lot of coverage is actually going to miss. A year ago, the dominant frame for AI safety was alignment. Could the model itself recognize harm and refuse to engage with it? The boundary lived inside the model, and very imperfectly. The model was supposed to be the safety architecture, again, very imperfectly. But what got built yesterday assumes something different entirely. It assumes that the model will recognize a crisis and route the recognition into a human network the user designated in advance. So the boundary moved here from inside the model, where again it was very imperfect, to inside a relationship. That's a redesign of what counts as a deployable safety architecture. The capability question is no longer just whether the system can recognize the moment, it's whether the product has the social infrastructure to put that recognition somewhere a human can act on it. If you ever sat with someone who was struggling and felt the weight of being the only person who knew, what got built yesterday is an answer to the structural problem the prior architecture didn't have language for, but what you've felt if you've been in that situation. The model can see the pattern, but the model can't sit on the couch with you. The trusted contact feature is an acknowledgement that someone has to. Meta has rolled out something similar for teens on Instagram. The design pattern is becoming somewhat general. Other AI conversation systems will be measured against this in the future. All right, shifting away to another story, and this one took me a minute to absorb. A study published yesterday in The Lancet examined 2.5 million biomedical research papers from PubMed Central, published between January 2023 and February 2026. They screened 97 million references, and they found roughly 3,000 papers containing fabricated citations, references that point to publications that do not exist. 12 times more fake citation papers in 2025 than in 2023. That's just 2 years. The authors described their numbers as, this is their phrase, conservative underestimates. A manual check of 500 flagged citations confirmed the fabrication in 7 out of 10 cases. Catherine Weber-Boer at Digital Science commented on the analysis and said that the growth in the problem suggests there's a generative AI component driving it. So if you've ever leaned on a medical decision that your doctor made, and most of us have somewhere, obviously, the literature underneath that decision is the substrate that the doctor's training and judgment rests on. A 12-fold increase in fabricated citations in 2 years is a signal in that substrate, so it's worth knowing about. But here's the part that I want to make sure really lands, because it's where the story will actually end up, regardless of how bad that sounds right now. 3 years ago, Screening 2.5 million papers against 97 million references was not a project a research team could run. It was unthinkable. A career's worth of manual reference checking compressed into one analysis. The same generative capability that is driving the surge in fabricated citations is what made the audit pipeline even possible. Trace that forward, and continuous citation auditing becomes part of the submission pipeline rather than a forensics exercise after publication. It just hasn't happened that way yet, but it will. The same way Mozilla's harness operates continuously rather than after release. The integrity crisis and the integrity infrastructure are running on the same curve, both compounding. They need time, but they will come together. The Lancet team screening pipeline itself is now a recoverable artifact. The next journal that integrates it at submission means a fabricated citation that until yesterday could survive peer review now gets flagged before it even lands. All right, another story I want to genuinely land on here because this one is genuinely good news, and we don't get that often enough about chronic kidney disease. Hopefully, more and more as our technology grows here. A clinical trial published yesterday from Tohoku University, 150 patients with moderate chronic kidney disease. They were given lubiprostone, which is a constipation medication that has been on the market for years, cheap, generic, available at any pharmacy. The patients on lubiprostone showed slower decline in kidney function than the standard trajectory of the disease. In a condition where there are currently no approved medications that directly restore kidney function and where the standard endgame is dialysis, that is a measurable shift. Now, the mechanism is what makes the story actually wonderful here. The Tohoku researchers started by noticing something super boring. Patients with chronic kidney disease tend to also have constipation. They wondered if the connection was something more than coincidence. And it turns out the gut bacteria changes that come with constipation produce less spermidine, which is a compound that supports mitochondrial health. And mitochondrial health is exactly what kidney cells need to keep filtering blood properly. So treating the constipation in this trial restored a microbiome state that produced enough spermidine to slow what had been considered an irreversible disease trajectory. If you've ever known someone on dialysis or worried about that future for yourself, given that chronic kidney disease affects hundreds of millions of people worldwide, what got published yesterday is meaningful. Now, to be precise about what this is and is not, this is a clinical trial result. The FDA has not approved lubiprostone for kidney disease. It's approved for constipation. So this is not your doctor will prescribe it for your kidneys tomorrow. Larger trials, regulatory review, and the standard clinical guidelines all sit between this finding and standard care, like normal. But the capability is now demonstrated. The mechanism is mapped and the trajectory is visible. A medication already in pharmacies has just demonstrated a previously unknown role in slowing one of the most prevalent chronic diseases on Earth. What was missing yesterday morning was the hypothesis that constipation, kidney function, and microbiome biology were the same problem, but that hypothesis now exists. And it came from researchers who started by paying attention to something that everyone else thought was just coincidence. To close out for today, here's what was actually built. A defensive AI workflow that found 271 real vulnerabilities in browser code is now a reusable engineering template that anyone can read and adapt. A class of vulnerability hiding inside AI coding agents is now published as an audit pattern that the next disclosure will start from. A safety architecture for AI conversation systems just moved from inside the model where it never worked very well to inside a human relationship that the user designated. An audit pipeline that screened 2.5 million biomedical papers in a single analysis demonstrated that the same generative capability driving the integrity crisis is producing the integrity infrastructure on the same clock. And on a different track entirely, a constipation drug already sitting in pharmacies has just demonstrated a previously unknown role in slowing one of the most prevalent chronic diseases on Earth. The dominant story about AI verification for the last 3 years has been the gap, the lag. The institutions can't keep up. That story carried a built-in assumption that the gap was a temporary state and a stable verified equilibrium was waiting somewhere on the other side of it. What yesterday's evidence shows is something different. The verification layer is not a destination, it's a continuously compounding artifact. Every published harness shortens the next team's runway. Every disclosed audit pattern shortens the next vulnerability search. Every recoverable screening pipeline lets the next journal catch what the prior journal couldn't. So if you've ever wondered whether the institutions that surround AI deployment are going to figure this out, what yesterday actually says is that figuring it out is not a one-time event. It is a curve, the same curve the capability is on. And the playbook for how the curve gets written in public, that is now itself public documentation. If the trajectory holds, then the next sign is going to look small. A second journal integration, an automated citation screen at a submission, a third agent platform shipping with a localhost trust audit baked in, a safety escalation feature in another major conversation system that designates a human network rather than relying on the model alone. So watch for whichever is the first one to come, because once that happens, others follow. What got built is the substrate the next round of verification gets to start from. Not a gap closing, but a curve compounding in public right alongside the capability. We'll see you tomorrow.